There's one thing I do every time before heading into the next season. Rather than looking ahead right away, I look back over the past year first. It's an opportunity to reassess my life and reflect on what has changed, how I spend my time, where I've been most often, how my routines have shifted, and what I reach for without thinking too much. Preparing my wardrobe isn't just about what's next. It's about recognizing repetition, reinforcing what's already working, and understanding the gaps left behind from previous seasons. Ultimately, it comes down to making sure that what I already own still aligns with how I live today. And sometimes that clarity starts by doing the minus first before adding anything new. So if you're also preparing your wardrobe for the next season, let's walk through this process together in this video. I don't start by looking at individual pieces. I start by looking across categories. Based on the season ahead, whether it's warmer or cooler, I focus on the categories that actually serve that transition. From there, I reflect on what I wore the most during the same season last year, what felt the most versatile, and what never seemed to leave the closet. The previous year always leaves clues if you slow down and pay attention. More often than not, the biggest improvement doesn't come from adding something new, but from removing what no longer feels relevant. Unworn pieces tend to accumulate quietly, creating visual noise and leading to decision fatigue. That familiar question, what should I wear today, is often caused not by a lack of options, but by the presence of items that no longer reflect how you live, yet still occupy mental space. There's also a quiet satisfaction in letting go. Sometimes removing pieces you no longer wear can feel just as rewarding, if not more so, than buying something new. If an item is still in good condition, I'll resell or donate it. If it's damaged beyond use, I recycle it responsibly. Adding new items before doing this work only makes decisions harder because subconsciously, you're still treating those outdated pieces as relevant, looking for ways to pair them or justify keeping them around. In the end, that means building on something that's no longer true. That's why, for me, reduction always comes before replacement. Every season asks for something different. Routines shift as days get longer or shorter. Travel plans come into the picture, and the weather changes, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. That could mean more rain, higher humidity, or a different balance between formal and casual days. Rather than starting with outfits, I start with materials. Wool versus cotton, breathable fabrics versus insulating ones, and whether waterproof outer layers are needed. The goal is to understand what will respond best to the season ahead. When transitioning from colder, shorter days into warmer, longer ones, lighter layers naturally come back into rotation. Temperature fluctuations throughout the day make flexibility more important than committing to a single heavy layer. So I focus on pieces that can be added or removed easily. Layering becomes less about warmth and more about adaptability. If there are trips planned during the season, understanding the weather at the destination is essential. Sometimes that does mean adding specific items, especially if the conditions are outside of what my everyday wardrobe can realistically handle. But that doesn't mean going all in. I try to add only what's necessary while maximizing what I already own because I don't live in those extreme conditions year-round. That's why I don't try to plan for every possible scenario. I plan for the most common ones. I put more intention and investment into the conditions I encounter most often, rather than solving for a single moment. Over time, that approach leads to a wardrobe that's practical, adaptable, and easier to rely on day to day. Friction only reveals itself through use. I pay close attention to what didn't work in practice during the same season last year, what felt inconvenient, required too much maintenance, or limited how I could mix and match the rest of my wardrobe. These issues rarely show up on day one. They only become obvious after living with the clothes over time. For example, in my current wardrobe, I have a solid range of heavier outerwear, but very few lightweight options. That imbalance limited how I could layer with intention. I often found myself wearing a heavy wool coat simply because there was no middle ground, right up until the point where it became too warm to continue. That's where identifying friction becomes useful, because it points to a specific problem that a new piece could actually solve. Even then, adding something new is never done in isolation. I always consider how a potential piece fits into what I already own. It shouldn't be too similar to existing items, and the color needs to complement the rest of my wardrobe rather than compete with it. Material also matters. Choosing something with a different texture can add contrast and depth, instead of repeating the same feel across everything. Sometimes the friction comes from the material itself. Linen is a good example. I love how it looks and how breathable it is, but it's also a magnet for wrinkles. Having to steam it after nearly every wash or wear eventually became draining. Over time, that level of maintenance made me reach for it less, which led me to look for alternatives that offered a similar comfort and breathability without the constant upkeep. New conditions can reveal gaps, but not every gap needs needs to be filled immediately. The goal isn't to add more pieces, but to resolve real points of friction. When done right, a single thoughtful addition can unlock more combinations and make the entire wardrobe easier to use, rather than adding more noise. This is where clarity starts to compound. Over time, you begin to notice patterns not just in what you like, but in what you consistently reach for without hesitation. When that happens, repetition stops being accidental and becomes intentional. It's no longer about variety for the sake of it, but about reinforcing what already works. Repeating silhouettes, colors, and proportions creates a sense of consistency. That consistency reduces decision-making and makes getting dressed feel quieter and more reliable. Instead of constantly recalibrating, you're building familiarity with your own preferences, and that familiarity turns into confidence. For example, there's a blue striped shirt that I find myself reaching for every year once the weather gets warmer. It's proven itself over time, not because it's special on its own, but because it fits naturally into how I dress. Rather than replacing it once it wears out, I chose to add a similar shirt in a different fit and material. That way, the original doesn't get overused, and I still get to rely on a piece that I know works. This kind of repetition isn't about playing it safe. It's about reducing friction and preserving what's already been validated through use. When you build around pieces you trust, the wardrobe becomes easier to navigate, and consistency starts working for you rather than against you. Not every problem needs to be solved immediately. Sometimes it's the right problem, but simply the wrong time. There are moments when I can't find something that meets all of my criteria, and when that happens, I don't compromise by settling for something that's just good enough. I know from experience that those pieces rarely hold up over time, especially from an emotional standpoint. The truth is, not having the perfect jacket isn't an emergency. If I come across one that truly fits my needs, that's great, I'll get it. If I don't, it's not a big deal. I move on and keep looking. There are plenty of unsolved gaps in my wardrobe that I've been aware of for years, and I'm comfortable letting them remain unsolved until the right option appears. A leather jacket is a good example. The biker jacket I bought close to a decade ago no longer aligns with my preferences or values. I've been searching for a replacement for about 3 years now, looking for the right style from the right maker at the right price. Another example is a clean black wool jacket. Ever since I sold my previous one because the oversized fit no longer felt right for me, I haven't found a replacement that truly fits my criteria. I'm still looking, but I'm not in a rush. Buying something just to fill a gap almost always leads to regret, and those are usually the pieces that quietly disappear the following year. Restraint here isn't a limitation, it's protection. If you want to go deeper into this mindset, I talk more about it in my 5 rules before buying anything video, which you can check out next. Preparing my wardrobe for a new season isn't about being ready for everything. It's about being clear on what's working, what no longer fits how I live, and what can wait. By editing before adding, defining what the season actually requires, identifying real points of friction, and choosing not to solve every gap immediately, the wardrobe becomes simpler, more flexible, and easier to rely on. This approach isn't about having less or owning more. It's about understanding your patterns, reinforcing what's already proven, and making decisions that hold up over time. When the process is intentional, getting dressed becomes quieter, and the focus shifts away from chasing options toward trusting what you've already built. If this way of thinking resonates with you, and you're interested in having more conversations around intentionality, decision-making, and mindset through the lens of a personal style, consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, live with intention.